Hi, I'm Elizabeth. Welcome to my universe. Thank you so much for joining me. In Food for Thought, I mentioned that I suffered from depression and that I would share my story with you, a bit of my story with you, and I would share a diary passage with you that I wrote when I was contemplating suicide. Well, I got up this morning and Leonard Cohen's song Hallelujah was reverberating in my head, and I felt like today was the day that I was going to share this with you. I said Elizabeth's Universe, when I started Elizabeth's Universe, I said that I would open my heart to you. Well, today is the day that I'm going to share this very personal, an excerpt of this very personal diary passage that I wrote when I was contemplating suicide. Now, just to give you a little bit of background, I'm Italian. I'm first generation Italian. Up until the point that I moved to Vancouver, a month shy of my 30th birthday, I was living at home with my parents. I moved to Vancouver in order to continue my acting career, and I didn't know anybody out here, but a year earlier I had been out here touring as Garfield the cat in a mall tour, and I fell in love with Vancouver. There was something about Vancouver that was drawing me to it. So in July, the beginning of July 9th, I think it was, July 8th, around there, I moved from Toronto to Vancouver. And just prior to moving to Vancouver, I had a dream that my father was not long for this world. Now, I have had prophetic dreams in my life since I was a kid. And I didn't want to believe it, but something inside of me said that my father was not long for this world. So when I moved to Vancouver, I moved with a heavy heart. And on July 22nd, 1991, I was just having a bad day. I was having a really bad day. I didn't have my parents around me. I didn't have my family around me. I didn't have my friends around me. I didn't have my support circle. And I was just having a bad day. And I lay down on my bed. I was staying at the, when I moved to Vancouver, I stayed at the YMCA for a bit. So I was staying at the YMCA. I was in my room, my little cubby hole, lying on my bed, and I'm writing this diary passage. And this is an excerpt of it. Oh my God. Jesus, no one said it was going to be easy, but today I'm feeling such a mixed bag of emotions that I don't know whether I'm coming or going. It's times like these that I wish my life was different, or that it took a different direction, one not as difficult. As I sit here thinking of various forms of suicide, my body tingles. I realize just how alive I am. Would I commit suicide? Could I slice my wrists and watch the blood ebb from my body? There's no turning back. My parents, my family, my friends, what would they think? What do I think as my life slowly dissipates? My body trembles with anger at the thought. I will achieve what I set out to do. I have to get over this hurdle. The release is good. This is the hardest night I have had since I came to Vancouver. I'm drained. Will I be okay? I guess no one can answer that except time. I am suddenly very tired. Good night. So you can see that I was in a black hole, and it was thinking about my family, thinking about my mother, my father, my family, my sisters, my brother, my friends. It got me thinking about the people that I would leave behind and how they would, how it would affect them. And I felt, it made me feel like I didn't want to put that on them. So I needed to figure things out. And about a week later, on July 29th, I had a dream. And it was a little bit different than the last one I had before I left Toronto, but the soul of it was the same. My father was not long for this world, and I felt it with everything I am, that my father was not long for this world. It threw me into a spiral, but I still, you know, I had a purpose. I was out in Vancouver for a reason. It was to continue on my acting path, and I was going to make it happen for myself. And a week later, a couple of weeks later, and then a couple of weeks later, my father, so I had my dream on the 29th. A couple of weeks later, on the 29th of July, a couple of weeks later, my father calls me to tell me that he has been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and that he's not long for the world. And that really, me and my father and I were so close. Man, oh man. So close that all my life I was worried that they would die, that my parents would die. Well, now my father was gonna die, and anyway, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I ended up, during this time, as I'm trying to figure things out and get myself out of this black hole, I had auditioned for a play called Which Witch is Which I ended up booking. It gave me a focus. So I didn't dwell so much on the fact that my father was going to pass. One night I had a dream, and it gave me a sense of urgency that I had to get to Toronto and see my father. So before we started rehearsals, it was the first week of September, I went to Toronto and spent some time with my father, spent a few days with my father because I had to get back because we were going into rehearsals. So I spent a few days with him, and it was great. And when I left, when I left the first time from Toronto to Vancouver, my father wouldn't say goodbye to me. He was so upset that I was leaving that he wouldn't say goodbye to me. And one of the things growing up that I would always dream about, and I'll get more into that story, but basically one of the things that I would always dream about is that people would die around me and I don't get a chance to say goodbye. So when I went back to Toronto and I spent those days with him, before I left the next day, I went into his bedroom that night, the night before I left, and I kissed him, and I said, "Ciao, Pop, ti amo." And he kissed me back and he said, "Dio ti benedica." And I knew that was going to be the last time that I saw my father alive. Got back to Vancouver, threw myself into, the name of the play was Which Witch is Which, threw myself into Which Witch is Which rehearsals, and probably about a week and a half after I got back to Vancouver from seeing my father, it was September 10th. 1991, and it was the early hour of the morning. It was the early hours of the morning when I was awakened. I was sleeping, and I was awakened by a very palpable energy around my bed, and I was filled with the sense that it was my father. And I put my arms out to give him a big bear hug, and I said, "Ciao, Pop, ti amo." And I could feel my father envelop me in his energy and just give me a big bear hug. And then it was gone. And I cried myself to sleep. The next morning, I'm expecting this dreaded phone call. You know, late morning, the phone rings. I think this is it. It's going to be my brother telling me that my father passed. Well, I answered the phone, and it was my friend, and she was inviting me for lunch. And I said, "Oh, great." So we went for lunch, went to an Italian place. There, on the menu, there was a dish with 3 different types of pasta, which was what I ordered. And I told my friend about, you know, being woken up at night and feeling the energy in my father, and you know, that I feel like he's passed, but nobody's called me, so maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, I got back to the Y. At this point, I'm staying at the YWCA. And I got back to the Y, and there was a message for me that my brother had called to give him a call back. Although I could accept incoming calls at the Y, I had to make outgoing calls using the payphones down in the lobby. So I called up my brother, and he told me that my father had passed away that night. That my father had passed away. And you know, although I felt it, it was still hit me like a ton of bricks. And I ended up going back to Toronto for the funeral. Got back and just threw myself into which is which. Just threw myself into which is which. If it hadn't been for which is which, I would have spiraled. God knows, I don't know if I would have come out of it. I was so devastated by not having my father around. It was one of my biggest fears throughout my whole life, growing up, that I'd not have him around. So it was pretty, it was hard. Anyway, so that was in September, and in November, on November 24th, Grey Cup Sunday, I met the man who would become my husband. And I'd never felt love like this in my life. So I moved to Vancouver. My father just passed, and I met the love of my life. And wow, there was so many different emotions going on inside of me that it was like overload. I felt like I was on overload. And you know, I started writing things out. When I found out that my father was dying, I wrote a poem titled Pop. And so I decided to start writing things out so that I could get my feelings out of there, and just so I could see them and I could understand them, and I could face my feelings. I could face them. I could see them. I could feel them. I could taste them. So I started getting into into the writing poetry out. And it started with my first poem, Pop. And on October, which I will share with you another time, when I'm going to do a segment on my father and the relationship that I had with my father, because it was very special. But in October 1992, I was still dealing with my father's death. I was experiencing love like I've never experienced it before. I was trying to get my acting career off the ground and get an agent and all of that stuff, and I was having a hell of a time. And I was temping. So I was really getting into a dark space. I felt like I was really losing myself. I was getting into a very dark space. And I felt like it was like a black vortex. I felt like I was in a black hole. So, like I said, I started writing things out. This poem here is called Vortex of Black. What am I doing here in this vortex of black? There seems to be no way out, no way in. How did I get here in this vortex of black? Will I ever begin to understand? Suspended from life, yet feeling the pain. Will it never cease to be? I am caught in a web that this vortex has spun. Help me, someone, cut myself free. I am being swallowed up in this vortex of black. Smaller, smaller, until there is nothing left. And I wrote that, like I said, in October 92, and I really felt like I needed to figure things out, because if I didn't figure things out, I just didn't know how long I would live. I really didn't seriously know. There was just so many emotions, and I was just so on overload, and it was time. It was time for me to figure out this depression, figure out why I was so depressed, why I was getting depressed, why I couldn't shed this heaviness that seemed to envelop me. And I did a lot of writing. I wrote out my feelings a lot in poetry, which I will share with you as we, as in different segments of Elizabeth's universe. But I did a lot of writing. And, it was really important to me that I figure this out because I loved my man so much. And I knew that unless I figured out what was going on inside of me, I didn't know how long our marriage would be able to, I didn't know how long our marriage would last because I was having some really dark periods that he was having to deal with. And I knew I had to figure things out. And I needed to get to the bottom of me. And I did a lot of writing. I immersed myself in my acting to become the best actor that I could. I took so many classes and read so many books and just made that a focal point. I made our relationship a focal point, the love between us. I really wanted to understand that because I'd never felt love like that before, and it was so intense and it was so passionate, and it was I love him so much. I'm still married to him 29 years later. That's right, 29. And we got married on June 21st, 93, the longest day of the year. Anyway, I love my man so much. It was really important to me. Our relationship was really important to me. So I knew that I had to figure things out within me. And I really wanted to figure things out. Like, my dad suffered from depression and he ended up taking pills, and I have nothing against pills. They serve a purpose and they help a lot of people. But for me, I really wanted to get to I knew I had to get to the bottom of it. I needed to be clear. I needed to get to the bottom of it so that I could get rid of it once and for all and just attain a lightness of being. That was my goal, to attain a lightness of being. To shed that heaviness around me. I just want to shed it. And it took years. It took years. I wrote Vortex of Black in 92. And in 98 is when the switch flipped for me. So, during, between 92 and 98, I really went inside of me. And I really mined myself for all that I am, all that I was, all that. It was amazing how in 1998, all that work that I did between 92 and 97 on myself just blossomed in 1998. And I attained an awareness another level of awareness that I hadn't had before. And, I started noticing things. I started becoming aware of things. When I say that the universe works in mysterious ways, it really does. I started becoming aware of that. Whenever I looked at the clock, it was 8:21. When I'd go by a bus and there would be 8:21 on the side of it. I was just seeing 8:21 a lot. And when I was seeing 8:21, I was getting buzz going through my body, and it was kind of tuning me into the universe. My ears would perk up, And the more I tuned in, and notice things like dates, notice things like names coming into my life, notice people saying something and then having somebody else say it, a week later. I was just noticing a lot of that. And it started enriching my life. And 1998, man, that was the year of my transformation. That's when I became aware of the bigger picture. And my place in the bigger picture. And it was like a switch flipped. And believe you me, it wasn't just like 1998 and then everything was hunky-dory. No, 1998 is when the transformation really began. And I hit a different level in 1998. And then I kept working. I was reading. I was voracious. Quotes. Oh, I was pulling them out of everywhere. I had my antenna up. Every single antenna that I had was up. And so, you never know when things are going to happen. If I had offed myself on July 22nd, 1991, when I was seriously contemplating it, I would have missed out on all of this other part that man, oh man, like my life opened up in ways that I would never have imagined. And I'm talking about not just the material life. I'm talking about the ethereal life. It's, man, oh man. Anyway, I'm going to share all of that information with you in, as I continue with Elizabeth's Universe. I'll be sharing that information with you. But for now, I just want you to know that, if you are thinking of suicide, if you are thinking of suicide, one of the things that stopped me from doing it was to think about my family, was to think about what I was leaving them behind to feel. And I didn't want to impose that kind of agonizing emotion on my family or my friends or anybody in my circle who knew me. I didn't want to be the person to inflict all that pain into them. That really stopped me. So anyway, I'm sharing that with you. I shared my diary passage. I shared my poem In and Out of the Vortex. I shared, and I opened my heart to you. And that is what I said I would do with Elizabeth's Universe. So I thank you so much for taking the time to spend with me. And there's a like button. There's a subscribe button. I'd love to have you on for the ride that is Elizabeth's Universe. I hope that you join me on my next chat. And until that time, ciao for now.